Okay, this is a summary for a lesson I'm preparing on how the United States neocons are manufacturing a new Cold War, which could last decades and which could be a big money maker that could be milked for a long time. All right, and already I've done the first two lessons, which is the greater bulk of the lesson. Now I'm starting the summary to kind of wrap it all up. And the summary is going to be in four, maybe five parts. I made the first part yesterday, and in this, I started off by wanting to first dispel the false notions that the United States is a peace-loving nation. All right, and I say the exact opposite, that we can be rightfully called the most militaristic and warmongering nation in recent history. This is not going back as far as like the Mongol empires and all back then, but in recent history, last couple hundred years or so of our existence, the great contender for us would be Great Britain, who within a 350-year period or so was the world's dominant power and the greatest militaristic conqueror of empire. So what I did yesterday is I showed you all the wars that we fought. All right, so I made this table, and I showed you how very few are justified. The vast majority we start, and they're mostly for either territorial or economic expansion in some way or another. In either case, it's economic. All right. Then I gave you some more detailed examples, although this is just a quick overview of some of our expansionist wars and how we started off as one tiny colony. I don't know if you've ever been to the Jamestown settlement. Maybe few have, but I have been there. It's tiny. Right. From there, we took the whole continent and plus Alaska and Hawaii and other protectorates. All right. So that's the first part. I said we fight a lot. We fight all the time. 2.77 wars per year. All right. Now I want to show you that these wars aren't forced upon us. We start these wars in clever, tricky ways. All right. So to think that the U.S. is going to start another war in a clever, tricky way is crazy. Well, you're crazy unless you just don't know history. Right? History says we do this over and over. And I'm going to go through these wars, just quick, brief summaries. Right? I can't go over them in detail again. It would just take too long. All right, so what I'll try to cover today is I'm going to try to cover the latest war we had, the invasion of Iraq, and the Vietnam War, and then conflict in the Middle East. I cannot teach you all the conflict in the Middle East that we've created, but I'll show you one example. The overthrow of the Iranian democracy. All right, and then we'll get to World War II with Pearl Harbor, and we'll stop there for today. World War I, Spanish-American War, Mexican-American War, and the Sioux War we'll cover tomorrow. Right, so that kind of evens it out, 4 and 4. All right, so the first one I want to cover today is the Iraq invasion war, and again, I risk watering things down by just giving you a brief, tiny, single snapshot picture. But at risk of watering it down, I'll try to do a summary. So, well, the first thing I want to say, I guess, is way back. Well, I'll explain this diagram. P stands for planning to use the Al Qaeda attack, 9/11 attack by Al Qaeda to attack Iraq. Right. F stands for jacking up fear in the American public. Right. R stands for the push to get a congressional resolution, which will become the legal basis for war. 3 times in our history, the United States population has been manipulated, and the Congress has been manipulated into war with a resolution. Spanish-American War, the Vietnam War, and this war. It worked every time. History repeats itself because not only do the masses don't know, our politicians don't remember. They don't learn from history. So the same tricks work again. All right. So I case I want to start over here. This is the 9/11 attacks, right? They hit the Twin Towers, they hit the Pentagon, and they're probably going to hit the nation's Capitol building, right? On that day, Richard Clarke, who was the anti-terror czar, he said he got a sharp physical pain. He literally was like physically, hurt when he realized that both Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz were going to try to take what Clarke said was this national tragedy and use that to further their plan against Iraq, right? Totally manipulative. Now, on day 2, 9/12, Bush is pushing it. Bush is twisting Richard Clarke's arm to try to pin this on Iraq. All right, I'll skip these days. This is with General Wesley Clark. And then, so on this day here, the Bush administration bragged that we have a meticulously planned strategy to manipulate the Congress, American public, and our allies into attacking Iraq. It was a total bait and switch in which you take all the fear and anxiety and terror and horror generated by this attack and then dumping it dishonestly, right? This is an attack by Al-Qaeda, dumping it on Iraq, using it to get a war against Iraq, right? It was a total bait and switch. Al-Qaeda attack, Al-Qaeda generated fear, dump it on Iraq, let's attack them, right? And you think people would not be so stupid as to fall for that? Well, it's like our whole country did. So big elements of this manipulation was to hype up fear and to manufacture false evidence. All right, so here's the general outline of the scheme. All right, so the starting point for this manipulation was the 1-year anniversary. This is the key triggering point for the start of this manipulation, because in the 1-year anniversary, it's kind of reactivating the memories, the fear, the horror of that day, the terror of that day, and how horrible it was, and all the people dying and buildings coming down, planes slamming into buildings, right? People jumping out of burning buildings, and it was horrible. And you use that, right, to kick off this scheme, right? All right, so let's see here. Yeah, a Blitz of Fear campaign timed with the 1-year anniversary to utilize all that fear. It actually started back here. We'll talk about this in a second. This is when Cheney made a big statement about hyping up fear, and there were 2 arrests here, timed arrests. All right. So the first whiff I got of this scheme was on, I think it was 9/9. This is 9/7. This is about 9/9. On 9/9, there was an intelligence report released, and I'm always wary of these intelligence reports because I've known from history that when they release these intelligence reports, they're often cooked up, bogus intelligence reports, and they're intended to manipulate the public perception. All right. So this intelligence report said that Iraq may have a nuclear weapon within a matter of months. Right. Boom! My radar went up. Right away, I'm thinking something's going on. There's something in play here, right? There's a manipulation going on. So I knew right then. And then I saw day after day with just like utter, dismay and frustration how they're manufacturing this, how they're pumping up fear, right? And so what it was is they had a massive fear campaign. All right, every damn day. Oh, Saddam is a devious, dictator who is building a massive arsenal of weapons of mass destruction, nuclear, biological, chemical, all of them, right? And they're saying exact amounts, right? None of it existed, but they're saying, oh, we know he's got exactly, 15,000 barrels of sarin and botulinum and, 10 tons of whatever, mustard and nerve gas, anthrax, and all sorts of stuff, right? Which they didn't have. And fear. He's going to use it against us. He's going to use it against our friends. He's going to give it to terrorists, and they're going to use it against us, right? He can launch these attacks within 45 minutes. On and on and on. They're making up all these false lies to jack up fear. And they pumped it up. It was a blitzkrieg, a massive wave of fear every damn day. They're harping on it, right? And then you can see how it builds up right before the vote for the resolution, right? And then right before this, they start repeating. This is times they jacked up fear, right? And this is times they talked about we need a resolution. The congressional resolution is going to keep us safe, right? So they build up the fear, and this is going to keep us safe amidst all this fear. And then you have the vote on the resolution right here, placed right before the congressional recess, which is when Congress leaves out to go home and spend their last 3 desperate weeks campaigning to get reelected. So this is the leverage here, November election. Now, with this massive environment of fear, this is like it was a toxic, thick cloud, a green mist of fear, right, that they manufactured. And they said this is the hope. Now, with election here, right, the vote for this right before the election, you vote against this, you just commit political suicide, right? You're some terrorist-loving, American public-hating, right? You don't care about the American public. You don't care about their safety. You're some crazy left-wing liberal, or you're some un-American, anti-American, unpatriotic. You're just crucified. Your opponent can just eat you alive, all right, in these last 3 weeks if you vote against this. So it created political pressure, right, to vote for this, to get the votes. And you know what? Democrats caved, all right? All right. So now the resolution itself, right, simply said it authorized the president to use military force. Well, that's it. It was like almost word for word for the Spanish-American War resolution and the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, right? All it did was authorize the president to use military force. That's a euphemistic, sneaky, low-key, what do you want to say, sneak it under the door way of getting a war. Because what is the use of military force? It could be shooting one bullet, or it can be a 15-year damn war, all right? What is a war? I don't know, the use of military force. So, yeah, that's how they got. Now, I say here there were, I talked about the intelligence report here. In my experience, knowing that, when they start releasing these things, it's for a purpose. It's intentional to manipulate the public, right? There were 6-time released intelligence reports throughout this period. They were just jamming it down the public's throat. There were 9 fear-hype Bush speeches or statements, releases, right? There were 8 timed arrests. The first 2 here were timed together. One in Seattle, one in Detroit, of terrorist groups, right? Then they made 2 arrests here on the same day, 9/11. Buffalo and this is one of the plotters, right? Then they made 4 timed arrests right before the vote, right here, right? So these 2 were timed together, these 2 were timed together, these 4 were timed together. And jacking up fear. There's terrorists still living among us. That's scary, right? We got to do something. Oh, the government's going to keep us safe. Government's going to keep you safe, huh? Get you in a damn dirty war that blows terrorism up exponentially. And in conjunction with this was the Karl Rove plan to use all this fear to win the 2002 election, to steal it, right? And it worked, right? The same thing worked in Vietnam, you see. You can use this terror and fear and threat of war to win elections, because there's going to be a rally around the public. There's going to be a rally towards the Republican Party, right? And then the Bush administration screwed up the war in the worst possible way. So they criminally stole this war, manufactured this war. Then they screwed it up in the worst possible way. If you leave it to intelligent military officers, right? Hopefully they're intelligent. There's no way they would have screwed it up this bad. So they screwed it up in the worst possible way, devastating the country, destabilizing the region, fanning the flames of terrorism, including the creation of ISIS and homegrown. Right? Those homegrown didn't exist until, I'm running out of space there, homegrown. All right, so that's how they manufactured that war. All right. I hope that's understood. I hope you can see that plan. I hope you can see how it was done. It's not that complicated. So this is one example of how wars can be manufactured and manipulated, right? So I'm going to give you another example, Vietnam War. And it's somewhat related because both of them were based upon congressional resolutions, not declaration of wars, right? A congressional resolution is all you need to get a war. All right. All right, Vietnam War. You know, one of our longest wars, one of our most problematic wars. It created a lot of fracture within our country. Over 58,000 Americans killed in that war. Many more messed up physically and psychologically and whatever way, emotionally, drugs too. But the Vietnamese suffered far more. It's like 1.3 or 1.4 million killed in that war. We lost 58,000. Well, they lost a bit more. We were far more effective at killing with our industries and technologies. All right. So, I don't know. There's so much of this war, and again, I risk minimizing it, watering it down by these brief overviews, but I guess I'll start with a statement by the director of the CIA, McCone, right, from a June 10th, 1964 meeting in Honolulu, which itself was meant to be a threat signal. But anyways, this is what the person who was writing the minutes, and the person writing the minutes was one of the members of the meeting, and these are all the top national security people. So whoever it was, I'm not sure who it was in this case, but you know, you're looking at the president, vice president, you're looking at the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, you're looking at Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, maybe the Chiefs of Staff, right? You're looking at the National Security Advisor, maybe Assistant National Security Advisor, all right? People like that. And Director of the CIA. He says, okay, Director McCone, CIA, said that putting U.S. troops on the ground in Southeast Asia would require a congressional resolution. He reminded the group that the idea of a resolution arose when we were discussing how to deal with a communist reaction to an attack by us on North Vietnamese targets. All right. So it's a little bit backwards. When I ask people to interpret this, they can't understand this. I'm serious. People like, what does that mean? But you know, in a sense, you can't fault them because it does. The way it's written is a little backwards. He's saying this. He's saying we attacked North Vietnam first, right? When they react to our attack, we use their reaction, right, as evidence of aggression, as of a threat, and we use that to take this resolution before Congress and have Congress sign off on it, right? So that's what he's saying. You know, we got to do. That's what he's saying. This resolution is all about. He said he reminded the group that the idea of the resolution arose when we were discussing how to deal with the communist reaction to an attack by us on North Vietnam. We attack them first. When they react, we use that, right? And that's exactly what was done. Later in the end of July, early August, all right. But the planning for this was well before, right? This is May 21st of 1964, when I'll get to this in a second, but it began back here. And what was played was what is called a multiple cognitive framework game, right? In which you expose two different separated, isolated populations to entirely different, packages of information, of signals, of threats, right? Right? And the idea is to create contradictory expectations intended to produce contradictory perceptions in what I guess you can call it a semiotic game, but you could think of it in terms of semiotics or drama. The idea that in the semiotics of drama, in drama theory, the idea is you never want to try to create a perception unless you, in advance, prepare expectations within the audience to see it that way. All right. What I'm saying is, in order to control perceptions of an event, you have to, in advance, before that, lead those people to expect to see it the way you want them to see it. All right? So you plant things in their head. You prepare them. That's semiotics, right? You lay down a trail of Hansel and Gretel, cookie crumbs, leading them on a path to where you want them to see things. All right? So, for example, I'll just try to explain this. All right, so the two different populations are North Vietnam and USA populations, right? Maybe North Vietnamese government and U.S. government and U.S. population. Okay. So to the North Vietnamese, you have a prepared plan. Here's a 30-day plan. Much more was done than actually on the 30-day plan, but almost everything was done in this plan. Only like 2 items were not conducted on this plan. So you send a barrage of signals to North Vietnam that you're going to attack. You repeatedly say, we're going to attack, we're going to invade you, we're going to overrun your country, we're going to turn it back, your political system. And then you start conducting actual attacks, right? Sabotage raids into the country, then actual attacks upon islands that are being bombarded from boats and from places being bombed by air attack, right? Then you make a setup where you send a ship right where you attack. Right? I'll explain this in a second here. To the U.S., you build up expectations of a communist attack, right? So here you're building up expectations of a U.S. attack. Here you're building up expectations of a communist attack. Part of the 30-day plan was you release a modified, built-up Jordan report, right? Oh, communist aggression, communist support for insurgency, communist weapon support. And then on July 25th, it was leaked to the press, or the day before, I guess, because this was printed on the 25th, that the communists are about to attack, right? You jack up the American public to expect a communist attack, and when they see an incident, they're going to say, see, we knew those communists are going to attack us. But to the Vietnamese, they're going to say, see, we knew those Americans are going to attack us. And then you get a war. So that's a multiple cognitive framework game where you create 2 different contradictory expectations, which is going to create 2 different, totally polar perceptions, totally opposite perceptions. North Vietnamese is going to see American aggression. U.S. is going to see communist aggression. All right, and it worked. 100% of congressmen were manipulated by it. 100% voted for this resolution. All but 2 senators voted for it. All right, so I'll cover this again. So this is what was done. Now, a key player here, there was a number of key players. Probably Averell Harriman was the linchpin, right? But another bonesman was this guy, George Bundy. He stated in a meeting, it was a National Security Council meeting, like this was a National Security Council meeting, another one on May 21st. He said, basically, like, hey, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the reason why that got all crazy and out of control was because of major movement of U.S. Forces in the southeast U.S. The communists, both Soviet Union and Cuba, they knew something was coming. Right, so they installed missiles as defense. Then he says this: can Op Plan 35 Alpha? Let's see here, 34 Alpha 37. Op Plan 37. Yeah, that was. Can Op Plan 37 be flexible enough that we can send these signals? And if not, can we make it so? Right. So he wants to send threat signals to get them on the defensive, to get them to react and do something, which we then turn around and say, see. That's aggression. Their reaction to our threat is portrayed as aggression. All right. So now that's on the 21st. Within 2 days, he has on Johnson's table a 30-day plan. 30 days to get it starting in mid-June. And sure enough, the first thing they did was mid-June. They sent a Canadian emissary with threats of an expanded war. So they're starting the threat signals, right? And that's what it says in the plan. So send a Canadian emissary. They sent Seaborn. All right. So then there's more threats here. These threats were buildups of jet bombers and jet fighters, big shipments of weapons. All right. These shipments were, according to the plan, not to be secret, but to be blasted out in the press to get wide public exposure in the press. We're sending these boatloads of weapons, boatload after boatload of weapons, right? Building up, getting ready for something. And then mid-June, there's a whole wave of threat signals. Another wave here in mid-July. These threat signals, everyone in the Johnson administration, including Johnson, right? But including other people, congressmen. Way back here, the first threat signal, I believe, was Congressman Laird, right? It was leaked to him by Secretary of State Russ that we have plans to invade North Vietnam, right? And we're going to invade North Vietnam. And then when this comes around, we're going to invade North Vietnam. We're going to drive to the north. We're going to attack North Vietnam. We're going to have an invasion of North Vietnam. On and on and on. They're all saying this, right? All right. So, and then here, they had actual attacks. I'm not sure exactly when these occurred. It was before this because on the 19th, that's when the commander of the South Vietnamese Air Force, Colonel Key, started blabbing in the press, right? Yeah, we're airdropping commandos into North Vietnam. We've airdropped them in, right? They're conducting sabotage missions, blowing up stuff, into North Vietnam. Right, and then he said something like this. He said, "Yeah, we're going to keep more and more of these, and we're going to escalate, and we're going to start bombing North Vietnam. And I guarantee you, this is what he said. He said all of North Vietnam will be destroyed, but especially Hanoi, the capital city, right? So we're attacking North Vietnam with sabotage raids, and then they're blabbing about it in the press." And then General Khan, the leader of South Vietnam, starts his To the North campaign, blabbing in the press, we're going to march north, right? And all along he was saying that, I want to attack north, but I'm not going to attack without, what he called, quote, ironclad U.S. guarantees backing, right? So he says, he's been saying repeatedly, we're going to want to drive to north, but not unless we get ironclad U.S. backing, right? So now he's saying we're doing it, right? And according to the 30-day plan, 7 days later, Johnson, I don't have that here. I guess I do. Maybe that's it there. Johnson, in the press says, he says, he's asked, well, what about, the South Vietnamese leaders, threats to attack North Vietnam, right? Do you agree with that? And then basically Johnson said, yeah, South Vietnamese policy is U.S. policy, right? We're one and the same. So he's back, and he totally backed that. And that was just one of the elements of the 30-day plan, which they conducted. All right, so then on July 31st, we start attacking islands off of North Vietnam. In fact, I'll show them to you. All right. In fact, I'll skip to this map now. So this is really the crux to what happened. This is the setup. Build up fear, build up expectations. We're going to attack. Oh, these are threat signals to the U.S. Yeah, Jordan report released here. That's what this is. Yeah. Then right before, the communists are going to attack us. Released to the press. Right. Build up an American mind that the communists are going to attack. And then when you have an incident, we're going to say, yeah, we knew the communists are going to attack us. Right. So you point the finger at them. All right. So what happened was this. On July 31st, I can't really read that. Maybe I'll make this larger. All right, that works. Okay, July 31st, at just after midnight, 0:30 to 0:45, there were two attacks. One on an island called Han Nu, right there, and another on an island called Han Mei, right there. All right, boat attacks, and they each were bombarded with cannon rounds. Han Mei is an island which has a North Vietnamese torpedo boat base, and they're bombarded with over 750 rounds. All this according to the U.S. Navy document, history of, where I got this, printed by the U.S. Navy, Department of the Navy. All right, there's an air attack. At the same time, there's an air attack, just shortly after, there's an air attack on the Laotian border, and there was an air attack right there at Nam Cam, right? All right. So now that you attack these islands, so for a month, for 2 months, you're saying we're going to attack you, we're going to attack you, we're going to attack you, right? We're going to invade you, we're going to invade you. And who are the masters of amphibious invasion? USA. No one's better. No one's more well equipped than the U.S. with amphibious warships, right? With naval air support, with naval artillery support. Anyway, so we're saying we're going to invade you. Then we start attacking these islands here, right? And they're covert black operations where no one knows about it. No one even knows they happen. And then right after this, approximately 8 hours after the attack, a ship called the USS Maddox, this ship right here, begins a totally different mission called the DeSoto mission. All right, the DeSoto mission is primarily to gather intelligence. The big thing was to gather signal intelligence on North Vietnamese gunfire controls for their radars and missiles, right? So that you record those signals, take them back to some lab, in the United States, I don't know, Sperry Rand or Raytheon, or I don't know who does all this stuff, right? And then you develop jamming for them. So the next time they turn on the radars to lock on, well, you just white out their screens, right? So what they have to do is they have to be kind of provocative, right? Come close to the North Vietnamese shores, interfere, be obnoxious, come close to their shipping, whether small boat or fishing vessels, right? And you try to provoke the North Vietnamese into turning on their radars. They're fire control radars. They're high frequency, high accuracy radars. All right. And then take other intelligence like water depth soundings and shoreline contour features and stuff like that. All right, so they're coming up, and around here somewhere, these attacks start occurring, the air attacks, and then as they're coming up here, the commander of the operation was Captain Herrick. Yeah, Captain Herrick. The captain of the boat was Commander Augier, but in charge of the whole operation was Commander Herrick or Captain Herrick, and they start intercepting North Vietnamese signals as they're approaching Han Mai that they're going to attack. They just got whacked by artillery rounds, by cannon rounds, right? There's a good amount of destruction on the island, so now they're pissed off, right? And they see this ship coming up here, a U.S. warship, as a threat after 2 months of, saying, we're going to attack you, right? They see it as a threat. So they're sending radio traffic back and forth, whatever. They see this as a threat, and they're going to attack. So the American commander, hightails it out of there, right? He turns tail and gets the heck out of there, calls for instructions, right? And he's ordered to go back to Han Mai. You go back to Han Mai. And he's like, I kind of don't think so. And he kind of skirts up here, right? Goes to Point Delta. Here's Alpha, Bravo, Delta. Where he's supposed to go, right? Gets up to Delta. Then he's ordered to Han Mai. So he's heading back to Han Mai. On the way back down, 3 torpedo boats come out at high speed, chase him. He turns tail again this way and runs this way. He calls it an airstrike. There was an American aircraft carrier on station, and they launched, I think it was primarily A4 Skyhawks and A7 Corsair 2s, right? Primarily, I believe, A4 Skyhawks. But anyways, they come in and they whack one of the boats. They sink one of the boats. Another boat was hit by their F5-inch guns. They're running away. They're like, boom, 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 right? They hit one of the boats. Another boat gets away scot-free, right? Then they turn tail and just get the hell out of there. Go back below. Here's the division between North Vietnam, South Vietnam. That's a demilitarized zone there. So they head out of the situation. You can see right there. They get out, right? Then they're ordered back in. 5 hours later, this is about midnight. Midnight, August 2nd. So 5 hours later, on August 3rd, 0500 August 3rd, they're ordered back in, and they go in with 2 boats. Well, you take some protection with you. So this is the USS Maddox. Here's the USS Turner Joy. 2 boats are going in, and they're ordered to complete this mission. You go to Point Oscar, November, Mike Lima, whatever, okay. They're supposed to complete the mission. It's going to go up here somewhere and then come back down. come back down with Lima, Mike, November, Oscar. All right. So they're going this way, and they're kind of staying further away than what they're supposed to, but they zoom past Han Mei. There's Han Mei, one of the islands. There's Han Nu. Both of those islands were whacked with cannon rounds. And they get up to here. They zoom past Han Mei, and they're coming around here. Okay. And when they get to about here, there was another boat attack at this point here. What's that, Vinron or something like that? Ron River Basin, Vinsan. Yeah, one of those Vietnamese names. So when they get to about here, there's another attack on this place here, right? So I'm fanning the flames, pouring gasoline when these guys are in this mission, right? Increasing the threat that these guys are going to get attacked, right? And then they're ordered, to come back around. They zoom past Han Mei again, and they haul ass out of there, right? Straight away. But when they get to this point here, this is about when Captain Herrick believes he has radar contact with hostile boats. And when I recall reading the books on this, right, the ranges they're stating were like 25,000, 26,000 yards away. And if you know anything about the curvature of the Earth, the basic, geometry of this, right, and the height of a typical radar antenna set upon the mast of a destroyer, right, at 26,000 yards, you're really not seeing these a boat with like a 5 or 6 foot freeboard, all right? If it's 5 or 6 feet out of the water, that radar, if this is the curvature of the Earth, right, and you're here, that radar is like just barely skimming across the top. And in addition to that, high sea states built up. You can't see anything. If anyone's seen a radar set, especially these old, old-fashioned ones from the 1940s and 50s, I mean, the Maddox was probably a 19, almost like just post-World War II class ship, right? Turner Drawer was a little more modern, but in either case, those radars were very rudimentary, very primitive, right? And when you look in high sea state, are you seeing a small boat like that? No, you're seeing just waves. Your whole screen is just whited out with radar return from waves. Good luck trying to find a little tiny boat at 26,000 yards. So, they should have known that this was suspect, right? I think this was just too much adrenaline, right? Anyway, so they're going down here. They're hauling out of there, trying to get out of there, thinking that there's boats out again. Part of this is because they were attacked. A real attack occurred here, right? And when they get to here, a sonarman called out that there were torpedoes in the water, right? He heard high-pitched sound of torpedo blades. But, again, over that night, high sea state built up, storms built up. And when you have big waves, that causes the boat to rock forward and aft, right? And when the stern comes up high out of the water, your own propeller blades increase in frequency, sounding like high-pitched torpedo blades. And so that was the probable explanation. But in any event, they turned on searchlights and they start pounding away with guns, and then they called in an airstrike. And the same guy who led the first attack here, who sank one of the boats, was Commander Stockdale. Later he would become an admiral. Later he would become like one of the most revered heroes at the U.S. Naval Academy. For what he did to sacrifice and to keep the prisoners together and alive in the North Vietnamese prison camps. So he was a Medal of Honor winner. He said there was nothing out there but black water, and American firepower. Right? There was no boats out there. So there's nothing out there. The second attack never occurred, and by midnight, Captain Herrick is reporting that he now believes the attack. He now doubts the attack really occurred, right? But it didn't matter. Very next day, Johnson orders on the 5th. They're getting out of there on the 4th, on the 5th. That same day, okay. Johnson orders airstrikes, retaliatory airstrikes onto North Vietnam. So they start bombing North Vietnam. All right. Based upon this bogus thing, based upon this totally set up incident, manufactured incident. And then on August 7th, the congressional resolution, which the first draft of the resolution was issued with the 30-day plan. First draft way back here. This wasn't like a last-minute response to the incident. They're setting this baby up going way back, months before, right? And they had multiple drafts. I believe there was 4 drafts, right? The one they presented was a 4th draft, which authorized the president to use military force. Right, that became the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, and that became the sole legal basis for the Vietnam War. All the draft, all the buildup of forces in Vietnam, right? 500,000 at least, on the ground in Vietnam. All the war, industrial weapons manufacturing appropriation bills. All right, here you get the resolution, right? And what does Congress do? 100% of congressmen voted for it, right? It was a total perfect manipulation. And then all but 2 senators voted for it. There were only 2 senators who didn't have their heads up their butt. I mean, that's just sad for our political leadership, right? And one of them there was Gruning and Morris, Senator Morris. Senator Morris was, I believe, he was an ex-political science professor at a university. And he said, this is a predated declaration of war. That's almost his exact words. This is a predated declaration of war. And then he said this is going to get us involved in a long, protracted war in Southeast Asia in which a lot of American boys are going to die. And you know what? He was the only one who saw what was going on, right? And then Johnson's popularity. This was a total setup incident, right? Johnson's popularity skyrocketed. It was in the low 30s. It was, Donald Trump approval rating, and it went to over 60%. It nearly doubled overnight in one night. In one day, it nearly doubled. And then with that popularity, he rolled into the November election, and he won by a landslide. All right? He was the guy that's going to keep us safe, right? The guy that's going to keep us safe, the guy who manufactured, well, he wasn't, it was a group effort here. It was, the damn Neocons leading this thing. But they manufactured this war, and he's elected on, he's the guy that's going to keep us safe. That's pretty funny. That's typical. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is so that's just 2 of them, right? So if I say you can't trust what's going on right now in whatever current event incident's going on, right? You don't know if it's really the other side or if it's us who's manufacturing this war, right? I put money on us from our experience, from all the wars we fight, from all the wars we manufacture. I'll put money on us first. That we're manufacturing this, right? Even if I don't know the facts yet, right? But you know what? Not the American public. Why? Because the American public basically knows nothing, right? I've taught this so many times. I made like 3 or 4 videos on this, right? Maybe not that many. Probably 3 times I made this on video. I've taught this, maybe 24 times in classes. Right, and no one retains. Nothing sticks. So it's back to, hey, he's crazy. He's crazy. All right. Anyways, this is all the conflict we create in the Middle East, and I cannot go back and teach you this. This took like 2 very long lessons, 3 hours each. I can't do that again, but I'll show you briefly. Here's my lesson 4. Maybe this will trigger a memory. This is lesson 4. Lesson 4 was on socialization and social interaction. I went through a handful of theories on social interaction. The first one was dramaturgical theory. Then this one that's dramaturgical theory. Then this one is on exchange theory. Peter Ball's exchange theory, right? And I can't go into the details of this. I think I really opened up eyes. Get people to see how things work, how things are. And then this led to the oil industry, right? History of the oil industry. I can't teach all this again. hopefully it'll, I taught him here about, why oil is so important strategically. Right, then I touched into the chemistry of oil-based compounds, petroleum, carbon-based, and how it's the backbone of the entire synthetic chemical industry, right? And just about everything that's made is made from oil. If it's not made out of wood, glass, like metals or ceramics, right? Well, it's oil, right? Um, then I got into the basis, the background of the oil industry, all right. And then I got into how the Middle East became important for us. I got into things like peak oil here, right? Oil did peak, right? And then you get into how there was a loss of control of price, and there was a shift of the monetary spare production to OPEC, right? And they gained control of price, which means they gained control of monopoly power. And then, well, here is the 1953 U.S. and British MI6, CIA and MI6 coup, which overthrew the Iranian democracy and installed a dictator, the Shah. So here's the prime minister. Well, we got rid of him and put this guy in, right? I'm going to go a little bit today about Dr. Wilbur's plan. Right, he was a chief planner, and he wrote the secret internal CIA history to document and record what was done and how they did it. And it became textbook for other overthrows and coups. Still done today, largely by largely by blockade, largely by these pro-democracy NGOs. That's the new means of doing it. Okay. All right. So we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in a second here, but I can't go into all of this history again. I know that literally zero of this is remembered. The average person remembers zero of all of this, right? And that's why social reality dominates, because it's like right there in front of your face, and it's based on nothing, no facts. None of this stuff sticks. But I'm just showing you, well, at one point, maybe you understood this. All the conflict we created in the Middle East, on and on and on, right? I'm not going to go into all the tricky things, right? And all the wars we created. All right. And this is how we screwed up Iraq. Then I got into the economics of oil, how it's so damn profitable. The economics of war within an oil-producing region. All right. So I'm not going to cover that. I'm just going to get into it explaining one of those. So I'm just going to focus on, out of all this, I'm just going to focus on this little bit here. All right? See, it's a tiny portion of like all the crap we did, but it's one thing. But this is kind of important because it shows how we can overthrow a government, what is done to overthrow governments, right? To destabilize governments, which is now being done largely by these, pro-democracy NGOs, right? Okay, so I scrolled through all that stuff just to, whet your, I don't know if it kind of remind you of things. I don't know if you remember anything. And this is a summary of the U.S. operation to overthrow the Iranian government called Operation Ajax, right? And then to install a dictator, the Shah of Iran. On May 2nd, 1951, Iran nationalized its oil, right? They said, okay, Britain, we gave you concessions and you developed this oil, right? But now it's ours, right? You're screwing us. You don't want to renegotiate, right? They're giving them 17% of profits, right? And wouldn't even let them to review the books, right? So Iran says, okay, right, well, we'll just take it, right? Well, this is a threat to the U.S. and Britain. Not simply with the loss of Iranian oil, but it's more of a threat in that it encourages nationalization around the world. If they just let Iran do this without any consequences, then everyone else is going to do this, right? Then you're going to get a flood that you cannot stop, right? So you know the idea. This is the real domino theory. You can't let them nationalize their own stuff, right? Because then everyone else is going to do it, right? Of course, we portrayed it as communism, right? Because that's a big scare thing, right? And that's what gets people motivated, right? But a lot of this was about nationalizing their resources. Um, I mean, communism was involved, and communism is a bad system, right? But a lot of this came down to just pure money, right? And okay, let's see here. So yeah, the real threat was a loss of control of all Western-owned foreign oil. Western-controlled foreign oil. More than that, it was a threat to nationalization of all Western-controlled foreign resources and investments. This extends beyond oil. It extends to minerals. It extends to agriculture. It extends to everything. Any resource in a foreign country that's being, controlled by a Western nation. For example, if you allow one nation to nationalize a foreign asset like oil or minerals or land without opposition, then every other third world nation with assets owned by foreigners will likewise nationalize. They're going to say, well, hell, why don't we do this? So, the overthrow of the Iranian democracy to maintain colonial control over its oil was a fight to maintain colonial control throughout the world. All right, you had to fight it anywhere, otherwise you threatened loss everywhere. All right, does that make sense? Hopefully it does. A strategy to overthrow the Iranian government and install a dictator, the Shah of Iran. So that's what this strategy is about. Now, the first key element was economic warfare. It is always a part of these destabilizing. The best way to destabilize the government is not with propaganda. I mean, propaganda I think is secondary. The first way to destabilize a country, to create conflict, is to destroy their economy, undermine their economy, right? That creates opposition to the government. All right. So the first thing that was done was economic warfare, largely due to a British naval blockade and sabotage of Iranian oil facilities. But this was the main thing: blockade. Right? We're shutting them out. You're not, shipping out or importing anything. Right? We're just isolating you. All right. And then USCI Operation TP Ajax. That's Operation Ajax that I told you about here, right? TP, I don't know what TP means. When I think of TP, I think toilet paper. But anyways, it's called TP Ajax. Sample elements of that plan so this is written by Dr. Wilbur, who was a chief planner. He's a guy who was a chief. I mean, it was a group effort, right? But he was the chief planner of this operation. All right, so I'm giving you a sample of things that were done. So it says here the CIA would manufacture fabricated documents proving secret agreement between Mossadegh and Tuda. Tuda is the Iran Communist Party, right? And then highly publicize them, right? So this is a photocopy of the actual document that was declassified and released. Would be widely publicized that this refugee movement on basis two grounds: popular dissatisfaction with Mossadegh, he's the prime minister, right? Government as follows. Ground one, that Mossadegh government basically anti-religious, right? Communist was atheistic, anti-religious, and within Iran is a very strong, fundamentalist Islamic group, right? Basically anti-religious, as most clearly demonstrated ties between Mossadegh and Tuda and Mossadegh and USSR. This was bogus. Just prior to movement, CIA would give widest publicity to all fabricated documents proving secret agreement between Mossadegh and Tuda. So the CIA is going to manufacture and then spread to the greatest possible extent their fabricated documents proving, right, which is crazy because it's made up, proving secret agreement between Mossadegh and Tuda, right? So that's propaganda. CIA would print counterfeit money and spread it. Then they would blame it on Mossadegh government, and then highly publicize that it was the cause of the economic collapse. However, the real cause of the economic collapse was the British naval blockade, right? Choking their economy, like we're choking Iran's economy right now. We're waging full-on economic warfare on Iran, right? People don't realize that, right? I mean, it's desperate times in Iran, right? Okay, especially oil sales, which was the bulk of the economy, along with various economic sanctions. There's a whole bunch of economic sanctions put on. Right? So here, ground two, this is from the document. Ground two, that Mossadegh is leading the country into complete economic collapse through its unsympathetic dictatorship. Right? This is bogus. Just prior to movement, CIA would give widest publicity to the evidence of illegally issued paper money. CIA might have capability to print masses, excellent imitation currency, which would be overprinted by this message. So the CIA is going to print counterfeit currency, right, to sabotage your economy. One great way of sabotaging the economy is through spreading a false currency, right, counterfeit currency, and then use that to exaggerate that effect as the basis of their economic collapse, which was not. The real basis for the economic collapse was the stranglehold economic blockade and sanctions. All right, so you see how they're manufacturing evidence? Now here's another one. You manufacture evidence. Plan, stage, and conduct terrorist attacks on Iranian religious leaders. So the CIA plans, stages, and conducts terrorist attacks on Iranian religious leaders. And then they have other Iranian religious leaders standing by to point the finger at Mossadegh. All right, when actually this is okay. So here it is. Final action, immediate preceding the coup. I say this actually comes from the British version of TPHX, but the British and American versions were nearly identical. Basically, they're on page. Planning was done mutually. Final action, immediately preceding the coup. As noted above, the military actions can result from situations A, B, or C. However, the pre-coup activities of the organization as described above will be primarily for the purpose of creating situation A, which is described below. Here's situation A. On the appointed day, staged attacks will be made against respected religious leaders in Tehran. Other religious leaders will at once say that these attacks were ordered by Mossadegh as his reaction to the disfavor in which his government is being held by religious leaders of the entire country. A number of the more important leaders will at once take sanction in the Majlis grounds. So the CIA and British Special Intelligence would orchestrate terrorist attacks and have people standing by to blame those attacks which they made upon the Iranian Prime Minister, right? As I recall, bomb attacks were conducted. Yeah, they were bomb attacks. Threatened to. I think here's one. Here's one cited down here. CIA used terror tactics to incite fear and then conducted terror attacks, blaming in the name of Tuda, blaming it on Tuda. So these are different attacks blamed on Tuda. All right, so material which the station considered to be helpful. CIA agents gave serious attention to alarming the religious leaders in Tehran by issuing black propaganda in the name of the Tuda party, right? Threatening these leaders with savage punishment if they oppose Mossadegh. So it's manufacturing that Mossadegh and Tuda are in league here, and that they're threatening to attack these religious leaders, right? Threatening phone calls were also made to them in the name of Tuda, right? So CIA is saying, hey, we're Tuda, we're going to attack you, right? And one of several planned sham bombings of the houses of these leaders was carried out. So they actually carried out one of these attacks in the name of Tuda, all right? So the CIA would pretend to be Tuda and then send threats, savage punishment to religious leaders, combined with staged bombings if they support Mossadegh. This is more fear-mongering. It is also meant to tie Mossadegh to the communists, which the religious leader hates. which the religious leaders hate because communist is atheistic. All right, so this comes from the British version. This is in Dr. Wilbur's history. He incorporated, or he added the British version of the plan, which, like I said, is totally on board with the American plan. I'll just read you excerpts of this. Organization to create, quote, organization to create maximum public opposition to Mossadegh prior to the coup, right? Create, quote, a massive propaganda campaign against Mossadegh and his government, but with Mossadegh himself as a principal target. So they're trying to take down Mossadegh in propaganda. Bombard the masses with, quote, articles, broadsheets, and pamphlets, some pro-Shah and some anti-Mossadegh. The material designed to discredit Mossadegh will hammer the following themes. Mossadegh favors the Tudeh Party and the USSR. This will be supported by black documents. So what this means is they're going to make this crap up. They're going to manufacture false documents. Here they call them fabricated documents. So they're going to make up false evidence. Well, golly, that's exactly what the CIA is experts at. Manufacturing false evidence, destroying evidence, right? Controlling perceptions. Now, what are black documents? They're fabricated documents. On page 24, the British document speaks of such fabricated documents. So here's a quote calling attention to these documents. Quote, at the same time above, the fullest publicity will be given to the U.S. station fabricated documents. So the U.S. fabricated documents, CIA, U.S. station is U.S. CIA station, fabricated documents, which prove and record a detailed secret agreement between Mossadegh and Tudeh. So we're talking about that up here, but the British know about that plan to make up stuff here. With the later promising to use their force in support of Mossadegh against the religious leaders, the army and the police. That's the USS. With Tudeh, the communists going to use those. Right. Mossadegh is an enemy of Islam. Quote, Mossadegh is an enemy of Islam since he associates with Tudeh and advances their aims. This was manufactured. Quote, Mossadegh is deliberately fostering the growth of regional separatist elements through his removal of army control over tribal areas. One of the aims of the removal of control by the army is to make it easier for the Soviets to take over northern provinces. Like he wants to give away the country to the Soviets. That is so untrue. Mossadegh was a nationalist. This guy was a hardcore nationalist. The reason why they nationalized oil is because he was leading the nationalist movement, right? He's not going to give away the country to the Soviet Union. No more is he going to give it away to the U.S. He's about Iran for Iran. This is blatant fear-mongering. Mossadegh was an ardent nationalist, right? There is no way he would intentionally weaken his country so that the Soviets could take over. Right? He wanted Iran for the Iranian people and not for foreigners to plunder. This is perfectly in line with the other made-up CIA, lies. But fear-mongering is effective because fear is both powerful and irrational, right? All right, so I'm not going to read through the rest of this. Let's see unless there's anything really good. It's the same stuff. Mossadegh is, leading you to economic, downfall. All right. All right, so that's an example of how you make a coup. Just to review some of the things. You make up documents, right, and then you pass them. And it's saying this proves, a relationship between Mossadegh and Tudeh when the CIA made up those documents. Right? Then you say, Mossadegh is printing counterfeit currency and it's destroying the economy. Well, who's making this? CIA's making that currency, and they're going to be spreading it, right? CIA might have capability to print mass excellent imitation currency, counterfeit, right? Then blame it on Mossadegh. And then, have the CIA say, hey, we're going to attack you. We're going to attack all the religious leaders, and we're the Communist Party, right? And then they attack. The CIA attacks them, right? Blames it on Mossadegh. Manufacturing conflict. Manufacturing wars. Manufacturing a coup in this case, right? I mean, it's not that complicated. I don't know if people are going to remember this, but, it doesn't take rocket science to figure this stuff out. All right, so here, Pearl Harbor is there's a ton of information. When I taught this in the class, I just gave an abbreviated version of it. I have a huge document with photocopies of original documents, right? And the reason why it's so damn easy to get these documents because they're all collected in a 35 volume set on the Pearl Harbor papers. There's like 8 investigations on this, right? Boatloads of documents. It's all available. It's printed on the Imbiblo site, the North Carolina University documents, public offering of documents. Anyways, all right, so the whole 39 volumes are provided by that website. I first came across them, I first studied them in the Harold Washington Library in downtown Chicago. Just a wonderful library with great resources, with a great collection. Much of it's stored down in the basement, right? And every damn day I went there, they roll out a cart with 39 books on there for me. All right. Okay. So what do I want to say here? What do Americans know about the Pearl Harbor attack, right? I've talked to so many people over the years, just kind of getting a feel for what people know about the Pearl Harbor attack. I'd say at least half, maybe more than half, know zero, nothing. It's like, what? They know nothing, right? You think that's shocking, but no, right? I believe the majority know zero. They can't tell you one thing. Those who can tell you one thing get one of 4 of these, or maybe they get some of these, right? Maybe even all of them, right? They know it's a Japanese attack, December 7th. It was a surprise attack. No one knew about it, which is totally false. Total Japanese trickery. Well, yeah, there's Japanese trickery involved, but who were the greater trickers, right? Okay. So these are quotes. This is a quote from Harold Ickes. I'll get back to. This is a quote from he's Secretary of Interior, the guy in charge of U.S. oil and resources. This is Secretary of War, the Secretary of Defense, essentially back then. Stimson, right? Testimony about a White House meeting on November 25th when the attack got underway. This is the day the Japanese attack got underway, right? And they knew from 7 messages that this was the day it would get underway. Then they know through actual sightings and through radio intercepts, transmissions that the attack is underway. So, what I want to teach, again, this is a threat of watering it down. All right, there's oodles of information, oodles that I'm overlooking and skipping of how they set this all up. Right, all the things that were done to set this up. All right. Okay. I'm gonna get a drink here. My throat's a little dry. So, let's see here. What I want to do is start with a conclusion and then develop the basis for this conclusion, going around in this circle here, and then coming full back circle around here, and then going back to the conclusion, and see if you have a different perception of this conclusion. I'm willing to bet most people think this is crazy, you're insane, right? Of course, that's people who know nothing, all right, which is typical. And then by the end, if this is totally changed, flipped 180, right? Lights off, lights on. Kind of sounds like, Danielson, wax on, wax off. But no. All right, so conclusion is this. The FDR administration not only knew that the attack was underway, they in fact maneuvered Japan into attacking, and then once they knew the attack was coming, they opened the door for a successful attack. They opened the way for a successful attack. Now that sounds crazy, right? Like no way the U.S. would do that. All right, okay. All right. Okay. So this is information about cutting off oil. Knowledge that cutting off oil will cause a war, right? So I suppose most people know that the war started in September 1939 when Germany invaded Poland, and the British and French said, okay, enough is enough, we're going to war. Right? That's the start of World War II. 1 month later, Ambassador Grew, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, flies back to Washington, D.C. and visits Roosevelt twice. 2 meetings. I can't go into details. I have his diary account of the meetings, but Grew says that in both meetings he emphasized that if we started sanctions on Japan and if we cut off oil to Japan, right, there was a high chance Japan, if Japan feels that its strategic security is threatened by the loss of American oil, then they'll in all likelihood go down and take the Dutch East Indies where there's oil, right? And then FDR responded. He responded, well, then we'll just jump them on the way, right? Kind of as probably a joke, but let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. Here's Japan, right? Now Japan could possibly get oil from the Middle East. Here's Persian oil going through got to go through the Straits of Persian Gulf, then Straits of Hormuz, then Indian Ocean, then Straits of Malacca, right? Here's Dutch East Indies oil. That's Borneo, right? Oil there. There's also oil in Burma area, right, which Japan took during World War II. But the Japanese main oil was here, Dutch East Indies, right? And there's oil in Texas and California, which is a source of Japanese oil. They're buying oil from the U.S., right? Dutch East Indies oil, this is, of course, Dutch, but the oil itself, the companies that were developing the oil were British, Dutch, and American. Two branches of the Standard. I think it was Standard New Jersey, Standard New York. Yeah, right. We're developing Dutch oil there, right? So he says that the Japanese are going to take that. Well, they're not going to take California. They're not going to take Texas, right? Good luck having an amphibious invasion all the way across this distance, supply lines all the way that long, right? And trying to take this and going deep into that's not happening, right? The only chance they got is Dutch East Indies. That's their shot, right? Their sole reasonable, feasible means of getting oil would take that, all right? So FDR knows that's a situation, right? Shortly after that, FDR said that, you know what? Even if the Japanese attack the Kra Peninsula, he called it, which is Malaysia, right? Thailand, right? Which is the Indochina, right? And Dutch East Indies and Philippines, he said. He doubts that the American public will be riled up enough to get to war. It's going to have to be closer to home, right? Now, when he said that, he basically, you could tell, that he knows the situation here, the strategic situation. You cut off all to Japan, they got to take Dutch East Indies. In order to secure Dutch East Indies oil, the first thing you got to do is get the British out of Malaysia, off the left flank. Before that, you got to get you got to seize control of the Indochina Peninsula, right? That's where you jump across to Malaysia, right? And it's also controlling the northern flank. And then you got to take the Philippines because you're not going to get oil back to Japan, right? Then you got to secure the whole chain of islands down here, New Guinea, right? The Solomon chain, all that stuff, right? Rabal's in there somewhere, Bougainville, right? All that stuff. All right, so Roosevelt was one smart guy. He knows the situation. And I like Roosevelt. He's probably my favorite president. He was no dummy. The dude was smart. Okay, so that's the first thing. May 31st, Japan warning, there will be war if you cut off oil. So yeah, what this is this. On May, I believe, early May, like May 3rd or something like that. I got it in my notes. Maybe it was like May 6th. We leaked to the press, a congressman leaked to the press that the U.S. may cut off oil. Then a similar leak was made on May 26th. All right, so twice in a month we leaked we're going to cut off oil to Japan. On May 31st, Japan responds, you cut off oil, there will be war. They're not saying there might be war, there's a chance of war, there's going to be increased threat of war. Japan says there will be war, right? What's Japan going to do without oil? What's any industrial nation going to do without oil, right? Just die, right? They have to get oil. All right, and then on June 23rd, Ickes writes a letter to FDR. In fact, I'll read it right now. So Ickes, who's Secretary of the Interior, in charge of U.S. oil and resources, who's the best, most knowledgeable person on the strategic resource situation, he writes to FDR this letter. Quote, there might develop from the embargoing of oil to Japan such a situation as would make it not only possible but easy to get into this war in an effective way. So what was the key threat? The key threat was Nazi Germany, right? That was the key strategic threat, not Japan. Japan didn't have the capacity to cause the trouble of Nazi Germany, especially in given the strategic situation of Germany, right? Being able to access, gain control over, all of Europe, right? All the resources of Europe, all the industries and commerce of Europe, and then the resources of the Soviet Union, and then the oil of not just Romania and the Soviet Union, right? And below that, all the oil of the Middle East, right below the Caucasus, right, where Soviet oil is, which was a key goal of Hitler, right? Right below that, you have all Middle East oil, all right? If Germany got that, you're looking for big problems, right? You're looking for German commercial domination of the world, which then leads to German military, might, right? That would have been a big problem if that were allowed to happen. So, yeah. So this shows that they're desperate to get into the war, which I think was necessary. This war, right? But this shows the desperation. It shows that they know that if they embargo oil to Japan, right, we're going to get in this war. We'll get them attacked. Later on, Ickes will say this. Ickes will say, if we go to war with Japan because the tripartite treaty wasn't in effect, right, then we'll go to war with Germany. We'll get our war with Germany, right? And the British knew this. The British were saying this, right, that a war between U.S. and Japan will be a backdoor to war. That's what they called it. That's where that famous phrase, Pearl Harbor was a backdoor to war. It came from the British. The British were pumping it up before Pearl Harbor out of hope, right? They were desperate to get the U.S. involved in the war. All right, so that's the Japanese one. We know that if we cut off oil, Japan's going to go to war. They're saying there will be war, right? Then Ickes writes, okay, this is our best chance to get into war. And make it easy, he says, to get into the war if we cut off oil. And then Admiral Turner is tasked to write a report on what will happen if we cut off oil to Japan. And he comes back and says exactly what Roosevelt understood. He says that we cut off oil to Japan. We're going to be at war with Japan. It's going to be war. And what's going to happen is this: they're going to take the Philippines. They're going to take Southeast Asia. They were already in Vietnam, occupying northern Vietnam, per agreement by the Vichy French government, right, who had sold out to Germany, and Germany's of course allied with Japan, right? And then they're going to jump over to Malaysia. This is exactly what they did. So it's not a very difficult strategic picture here, right? It's pretty easy to understand what they got to do. They got to take Southeast Asia. They got to jump over to Malaysia. This is the British stronghold. You got to get the British out of Malaysia. Then you got to take the Dutch East Indies. Jump over here. Take the Dutch East Indies. Now you got the oil, right? To get that oil back to Japan, then to cover your northeastern flank, you got to take the Philippines. There's a major naval base, a U.S. naval base here. This was our main naval base since the Spanish-American War, right? In the Pacific, in the Far East Pacific, I guess, which is really the Far West, right? Pacific. So that's what Ickes says. They're gonna take here. They got to take here. This, and they're gonna take here, and they're gonna take here, right? Okay, Admiral Turner says there's going to be war. And then there's 29 messages, intercepted messages, where Japan is panicked over loss of oil. Right? There's 5 messages in which it's openly stated Japan fears that war with they're going to fear that if oil is cut off, they're going to have to go to war with the U.S. They fear war with the U.S. if oil is cut off, right? And then there's 7 panic. Oh no, wait. On July 25th, the U.S., UK, and Dutch all cut off oil at the same time. Now you tell me that's an accident. That's just random. No, they cut it off in coordination and in conjunction, right? That's all possible sources of Japanese oil cut off at once, one day. Then what happens? The very next day, on July 26th, remember I said how Japan had occupied northern Vietnam, northern Indochina? Well, Indochina includes all this, right? As per agreement with the French government, right? Then next day they moved down into southern Vietnam. And southern Vietnam became the launching point for their jump across over to Malaysia on December 7th. Right? They would jump across there, and then in a 1-month campaign, or less than 1 month, 3-week campaign, drive the British out of Malaysia. So by the end of December, they're at the bottom of Malaysia, right at the point of jumping across to the Dutch East Indies. Okay. Now, after we cut off oil, of course, Japan moved into southern Indochina to prepare to attack Malaysia. All right. Then there's 7 panic messages citing November 25th as the absolute deadline. And these are panic messages by the Japanese diplomats saying, for God's sakes, please, with all due urgency, right, get resolved the negotiations to get oil back, right? Otherwise, what it was said is things are automatically going to happen. It wasn't openly stated, right? But they knew that it meant war, and they're desperate to avoid war, right? And so we know through 7 messages intercepted, decoded, that their deadline is November 25th. Right, we'll see what happens on November 25th down here, and we'll see how we responded to that. Right, so in 7 ways, right, 7 different ways we knew that if we cut off oil, we're going to have war. Right, so when we cut off oil, knowing in 7 different ways, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right, that there's no excuse for not knowing there's going to be war. Right? They knew war was coming, and they said we want a war. Right here, said we want a war. They're openly saying we want a war, and we know how to get it by cutting off oil to Japan. Right? And they know in 7 ways that if they cut off oil, there's going to be a war. Now here's testimony by military officers, Admiral Richardson and Admiral Stark. Right? Admiral Richardson was a straight up solid guy. Admiral Stark was pretty, I don't want to say sneaky, but he was definitely savvy, cover his ass type of guy. So Admiral Richardson had several meetings with FDR. I'm not going to go through all the different meetings and all the different things he said in different meetings, but basically he's saying FDR wants war. He's trying to get us into this war. This is going back to July of 1940, a year and a half, well, a year and whatever, 4 months or so before Pearl Harbor. All right. Richardson saying he's trying to get us into this war. And then both Admiral Richardson and Admiral Stark testified that FDR is willing to sacrifice U.S. naval ships to get us into this war. Admiral Richardson said that he's willing to sacrifice a ship of the Navy to get us into this war. Right? Admiral Stark wrote a letter to FDR, and just knowing Stark, and I can't say no Stark, but from what I gather from his actions and his statements and what he's done, he was a clever, tricky dude, right? He knew how to cover his butt. He was angling, always thinking, right? So he writes a letter to FDR on February 11th, I believe it was. It was February, I believe it was 11th. I have to go back to my other files, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 11th. On February 11th, he writes a letter to FDR and says, as per our conversation, right, when we talked, right, as I understand it, you are willing to sacrifice 1 or 2 of our cruisers, but not 5 or 6. And frankly, I breathe a great sigh of relief, right? And any money he's writing that letter because he knows that those ships are sunk, it's going to be his ass. He's going to be sacrificed, crucified for that, right? He's going to be scapegoated. And now he's got his little ticket, his hot little letters, documentation that FDR is behind this. So he's not going down, right? Any money, that's why he did that. It's my guess, but, he's a smart dude, and that's what he's doing. So he's covering his butt. But it left evidence. It left documentation that FDR was in open statement, openly said he's willing to sacrifice. He wants to sacrifice one or two of our ships to get us into this war, right? But not 5 or 6. And that was part of the cruisers. The cruise that was part of the plan down here. Provocation plan. So there's a provocation plan in October 1940 that's issued. I believe it was issued October 7th, which is funny because that's my brother's birthday. In that plan, there's 8 action items to induce Japan into attacking us. So we want war. This clearly shows that we want war. They're trying to get Japan to attack us, right? And none of these worked. One of them was that cruiser plan. The plan was to send out a bunch of U.S. cruisers in a threatening, provocative mission close to Japan, hoping to get them sunk, right? And according to Stark, what they were going to do is, right before they sent these ships, they're going to leak to the press that these ships are going on a top secret mission, all right? I mean, if they're really going on a top secret mission, you don't leak that to the press, right? They're leaking that to the press to jack up Japanese fear, to increase the likelihood they're going to attack these ships, all right? But it didn't work. They didn't fall for that. All right. So that's what Stark says. He's on paper saying we're going to leak to the press, I forget now. Someone said that. I'm pretty sure it was Stark, or someone else said. I got that in my other notes, my big file. But that was part of the plan, to leak to the press that, the cruisers are coming on a top secret mission to get them attacked and sunk. All right. Then in January 27th of 1941, this guy, Ambassador Grew, cables the State Department and says, I've got solid evidence from multiple sources, one of which is Japanese, right, that the Japanese are planning to attack Pearl Harbor, right? They're going to attack Pearl Harbor, right? Now, 4 days later, on January 31st, the guy who wrote this provocation plan, Captain McCullough sends messages to all Pacific bases, right? Disregard the Grew warning. There is no evidence or credence to, what did he say? There's no credence to these rumors. That's what he said, right? It's just made up rumors. Don't worry about it. Forget about it, right? There's no evidence supporting this, right? But what happened at the time when McCullum discrediting the warning, right? They had 9 of the 24 intercepted messages, Japanese messages targeting Pearl Harbor. They had 9 messages by Japan, right, targeting Pearl Harbor to attack. Right? So they knew, and they said, don't worry about it, right? Now, there's 24 intercepted messages targeting Pearl Harbor, right? So by December 7th, before that, we had in hand 24 messages targeting Pearl Harbor. Admiral Halsey said in the introduction to Admiral, I keep forgetting his name. He wrote a book defending Admiral Kimmel. He was he was the commander of the destroyer forces in the Pacific. It was Admiral. Let me look it up here. Book. Final. Theobald, that's it. Admiral Theobald. So this guy was friends with Kimmel, who was scapegoated, right? And Admiral Halsey wrote the introduction for this book. And in the introduction, Admiral Halsey says, um, hey, if we had known about these messages were kept from them, right? They're hidden from them. They're concealed to Pearl Harbor and anyone involved. Had we known about these messages, right, there's no way I would have left Hawaii because they're ordered away. When the attack was underway, when they knew the attack was underway, they ordered the carriers away. That no, on the 26th. So the 25th, they knew they were on the way. Next day, they ordered the carriers away. November 26th, right? So the carriers were the key defensive assets, protecting Hawaii, protecting Pearl Harbor, and they're ordered to go away, opening the door once they knew the attack is underway. And Admiral Halsey says there's no way it would have left, right? Had I known, he says, the practical certainty, that's the term he used, the practical certainty of a Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, right? There's no way I would have left. And there's no way that Kimmel would have ordered me to leave, right? He says. All right, so we had 24 messages targeting Pearl Harbor. Of course, they were kept from the people at Pearl Harbor. There were classic indications of war. We intercepted 5 messages to destroy the codes and code machine. Orders 5 messages. 5. I'm going to put 5 there. 5 messages. Right. Including in those messages was the famous WINS code, which I may or may not tell you about here, if it's relevant, if I got time. Order to recall dependents. Oh yeah. There's 2 messages on orders to recall dependents. This is always used. This is often used as a threat signal. When you order dependents out of the way, that's often a threat signal, either to your own public, a manufactured fear threat, or a threat to the other country that you're going to attack. But in the case, it's often used as a false fear threat signal. Telephone code. Yeah, so I'll give this telephone code. I guess I will talk about this. So one of these messages involving the orders to call destroyers, hey, before they destroyed their codes and code machines, they sent a telephone code, right, which is meant to be sent open telephone, all right, and the telephone line would go from Washington, D.C., the Japanese diplomatic corps in Washington, D.C., straight back to Admiral Yamamoto, the top admiral, right? And what it was is simply stating a statement about the winds, right? And in open language. And if you said this about the winds, that means that negotiations have succeeded. And if you said this, that means negotiations have failed. If negotiations have failed, the Japanese would continue on with the attack. The ships coming across. So this is where the Japanese ships. I tried to replicate this map here identically. I came pretty close, I think, right? But this is the actual Japanese map attacking Pearl Harbor. They would come this way and they would scoot out, go this way. Try to do like an evasive thing down here, right? And it was anywhere along the path towards Japan they can be called to turn back if negotiations have succeeded. So they're holding out for the last minute, hoping not to have to attack and go to war. If they can get oil, they call back the attack, right? Yeah, so that's the purpose of that code is an open telephone code. So after they destroy the code machines, well, you just say you pass the message out in the open so that anyone can intercept it, right? But they're not going to know what exactly it means. Now we know Japan is desperate, and there's a November 25th deadline through 7 messages stating that's the deadline. You got to get this done before November 25th, or things are automatically going to happen. Right? They knew that meant war. So what happens on November 25th? Everyone in the White House is waiting with bated breath, right? And then intelligence reports comes in that the entire Japanese Southern Fleet has been sighted off of Formosa. Where's Formosa? Formosa's right about there, right? Heading towards the Philippines, carrying 5 Army divisions, right? Or maybe they're heading, I don't know, maybe they're heading down. I'm not sure where they went. They could have gone to, China. So we know the attack is on, though. The whole southern Japanese fleet. Now, also on the 25th, we knew the whole northern fleet got underway. All right. Admiral Turner, the same guy who he's chief of Navy war plans, right? So he's chief naval strategist in a sense, right? His only focus, the main focus is strategic thinking, right? He said this. He testified to Congress that on the 25th, 2 weeks prior to the 25th, there was high rate of radio traffic on the Northern Fleet, stationed way up here on one of those northern islands. All right. And then he said that on the 25th, they went total radio silent. And he said that told us we knew we knew with certainty that meant that the Northern Fleet had got underway. Right, the whole Northern Fleet had got underway, and he said that there were two possibilities. It was a simple proposition. He said that one, they're going to attack Pearl Harbor, or two, they're going to set up a blocking line in the Mandate Islands. So our islands out here, this was our possession, Philippines. Mandates are around here, right? These are all the mandates. I don't know, Caroline's around here. Then you have Gilbert's around here, right? This is the Marianas, actually. That's probably Guam. I'm pointing towards there, right? They're going to set up a blocking line around here, or they're going to attack Pearl Harbor, right? And he said at least a 50-50 chance, right? Now, with 24 messages targeting Pearl Harbor, I'd say it's a little bit more than 50-50. Maybe 60-40, maybe 70-30, maybe even 80-20. But you know there's a high chance they're going to attack Pearl Harbor, and you tell them nothing, right? So they know the attack is underway, right? The whole Southern Fleet is underway. The whole damn Japanese fleet is attacking, right? They know this is attacking. They know that they're desperate and that they're going to have to take actions on the 25th. On the 25th, they know the attack is underway. They know they have to take actions because they have to go to war because of oil, right? And they're desperate to negotiate oil. And the deadline is the 25th. Because why? Japan had 6 months oil. So it's cut off in July. That means by the end of January, they're out. Right? They got attacked by December because they got they got to seize the entire Malayan Peninsula, then jump across and seize the entire Borneo, right? And then get the no doubt they're expecting that they're going to be putting out oil fires because there were reports in the paper. I forget the dates, but the Dutch were saying we're going to. Japan attacks us. The Dutch people were expecting a Japanese attack more and more. They said, Japan attacks us, we're going to blow all our wells, right? Kind of like a Kuwait thing. Saddam Hussein, on his way out, blows all the Kuwaiti wells. Well, right? So those wells are going to be worthless to the Japanese until they get the oil fires out, right? It's going to take time. And in the meantime, within 6 months, they're out of oil. They're done. It's lights out. So there's a time crunch situation here. They got to get this attack by December 7th. November 25th is the deadline because they got to come across and then attack by December 7th, and then attack on the same day. They attacked. They attacked Wake. Oh, yeah, attacked Wake the same day. Wake, Guam, Japan. It's on the 8th, but this is the international time zone, so this is really the next day. December 7th is now December 8th over here, right? So with the sun coming across this way, they attacked first. Pearl Harbor, Wake, Guam, Philippines, jumped across Malaysia, right? And their main target was not Pearl Harbor. Their main goal was always the oil, right? From our perspective, they attacked Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was only part of it because that was obstruction to Japanese control of the Philippines and also the securing of the oil and oil routes, right? All right, so they know the attack is underway. All right, so you know what? Let's see. No, I guess I have a couple statements by Secretary of War Stimson, which I was going to share with you, but I'll share them when I get to here. I guess I'll wait. All right, so what did the FDR administration do once they knew the attack is on the way? They know the attack is on the way, coming, right? They took actions to open Pearl Harbor up to attack. First thing they did was this. They ordered all shipping. So this is the route of the Japanese attack. They got Midway Island is about here. They got to avoid Midway Island because you can have within a certain radius, maybe 200, 300 miles, 300 miles max. Right? Here's like 700 miles closest. You could have search planes going out, all right, and looking for the Japanese fleet. So they're evading that. They're skirting around Midway, right? And what was I saying here? Oh, yeah. So here's the Japanese line of attack, right? Now, after July 25th, there was no shipping, American ships, trading with Japan, right? Because all trades cut off with Japan on July 25th. But we had negotiated, we had set up the Lend-Lease with the Soviet Union, and we're sending ships to Vladivostok, which were right about there, Vladivostok, right about there, a little cup there, right? That's Vladivostok. Vladivostok is not a warm water port. That ice is over. Oh, that's right. That's why they wanted Port Arthur. That's right. Okay, so this wasn't a warm water port. But anyways, Vladivostok, we're sending stuff to Vladivostok, right? And those ships were going through the Japanese islands, right through there, crossing that path. So on the 25th, the order was out to reroute all shipping through the Straits of Torres. Boom, down here, right? Here's the Straits of Torres, going down south of the Solomons, between Australia and New Guinea, right? And then up through here, wherever you want to go, all right? All shipping. So all shipping rerouted. Nothing's going to stumble across. It's opening the way for these ships to go through. You see what I'm saying? Then the very next day, they sent the carriers away. All right? Yeah. So the carriers, here's why. The carriers were patrolling this area right here, northwest of Hawaii, right? And they expected a Japanese attack to come from the northwest, right? For decades and decades, right? This was part of the war plans. The Japanese would come from the northwest if there was an attack on Hawaii, right? So there were two carriers there. I know the Enterprise was one. I think it was the Saratoga was the other one, or Lexington. I think it was a Saratoga. I can't remember now. But there's two carriers, right? Two carriers. The Enterprise was sent to Midway, and the other one, I think it was a Saratoga. Let me look it up real quick. What just happened? What U.S. carriers were at Hawaii prior to Pearl Harbor? Let's see if Wikipedia has something here. I think it's Saratoga. Let's see. So, Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga. I know those are three carriers we had out there, but I think the Saratoga was sent away. Lexington was somewhere else. Well, the two carriers protecting them at that time were both sent away. All right, one to Midway. Midway's around there, and this is Wake over here. All right, so you cleared the path. You cleared out the key defensive asset to defend Pearl Harbor. All right, and then they sent the whole ultimatum. The whole ultimatum basically said to Japan, in very polite language, oh yeah, please get out, you got to get out of all your operations in China, all your operations in Manchuria, all your operations in Southeast Asia, right? You just get the hell out of everything, right? Yeah, right, they're going to drop all that, right? Especially when, they have massive food shortages and resource shortages, right? I mean, due to the trade breakdown, right? It's just not going to happen. And what what the whole ultimatum was a final nail. It was to send something that they knew that it was a fait accompli. They in sending that, they knew that's going to have to be rejected. And in sending such an extreme demand, you stop everything, you get out of everything, right? They know Japan's not can't do that, right? They can't just drop everything, right? So it was meant to send a signal: we're not negotiating. We're done negotiating. We're going to throw you this thing, but we know that there's no way you're going to agree to, which shows that we're not negotiating anymore, right? And sure enough, the Japanese were desperate still to negotiate because they had this wins code, right? And they kept that, hoping to get negotiations settled, right, before the attack is underway, anywhere along the way. So they're desperate for negotiating. But then what happened was on the 28th, November 28th, both Admiral Stark, the top Navy admiral, sent a message to Admiral Kimmel in Japan, so here in Washington, sent a message to Admiral Kimmel, and General Marshall, the top Army general, sends a message to General Short in Hawaii, both saying identical words that negotiations have ceased. Well, not in Japan. Japan's desperately trying to get negotiations so they don't have to make this attack that's going to get them in this war. That's horrible, right? So it was Americans saying negotiations have ceased, right? Why? Because we sent the whole ultimatum. And then the next thing was they sent messages saying, hey, focus all your attention. This is where the attack is going to come. You know, Wake, Midway, Wake. You know, well, actually it was Wake, Guam, Philippines. Right? Focus your attention here. And so they opened the way for attack. Then on December 6th, we received Japan's declaration of war. Right? So it was sent by the Japanese Foreign Ministry in Japan, Tokyo, to Washington on December 6th. It was intercepted and then decoded and then hand delivered to FDR on the evening of December 6th, before Pearl Harbor, day before, by Commander Scholes. He testifies, his written testimony is down, his stated testimony, and he says this. He said he hand delivered this to FDR about 9 p.m., and FDR read it. It was a 14-point declaration of war, and after FDR read it, without saying a word, he handed it to Harold Ickes, FDR's trusted advisor. He took it, he read it, and then after he finished reading it, he handed it back, and then FDR said, this means war, and Harold Ickes agreed. Right? So they knew that was a declaration of war, and it was actually, in part of the instruction, it was to be delivered at 12 noon on December 7th, which would be just after the Pearl Harbor attacks had occurred, about 35 minutes, because the Pearl Harbor attacks occurred in Hawaii time at 7:55 a.m. It was a half time zone involved there, so it's 3.5 hours away, which gave 35 minutes attack before the delivery of the message, which is a typical thing the Japanese did, you know, throughout their attacks, right? Russo-Japanese War, Sino-Japanese War, right? They would have a sneak attack, and they would then, shortly after that, have a time to deliver their declaration of war after they got their attack started. All right. So now there's confessions here. Icky said, you know, here, yeah, you can use this war we can use cutting off oil to get it into the war, right? Then Icky said this. He said, if we go to war with Japan, we will undoubtedly go to war with Germany. What did he say? His word? I think he said undoubtedly. We will certainly, or something like that. Let me, if I can look it up real quick here. I have this. Oh yeah, he said, okay. For a long time, I believed that our best entrance into the war would be way of Japan. Undoubtedly, we are nearer this eventually than ever. And of course, if we go to war against Japan, it will inevitably lead us to war against Germany. Oh, okay, so that's his words. Stimson said we maneuvered Japan into attacking us to get public support for the war, right? We knew the attack was coming, and we let them attack. All right, so let's read what Stimson had to say, his actual words. Right? right? That's just a summary of them. So this is pertaining to the November 25th. Remember I said that's a deadline. That's the same day. This is the Japanese deadline stated in 7 messages, and it's the day we knew the attack is on the way. Both Southern Fleet and Northern Fleet were attacking on this day. We knew this, right? He said the president said this is about a noon meeting, a meeting they had in the White House about noon. And all the top national security advisors were there. I'm not going to go on the list. The president said that the Japanese were notorious for making an attack without warning and stated that we might be attacked, say, next Monday, for example. One problem troubled us very much. If you know your enemy is going to strike you, which we knew that their attack is coming on that day, right? It is not usually wise to wait until he gets a jump on you. So it's not usually wise to get them to attack first. By taking the initiative. In spite of the risk involved, however, in letting the Japanese fire the first shot, we realized that in order to have the full support of the American people, so this was all about manipulating the public into supporting the war, it was desirable to make sure that the Japanese be the ones to do this so that there would remain no doubt in mind as to who the aggressors were. Who were the aggressors? Right? Well, who set this all up? Who cut off oil to make sure that they would attack? Right. The question was how. So this is another. This is from a testimony in a congressional investigation. Here's another congressional investigation. He says about the same meeting. Right. He's talking about the same meeting here. The question was how we should maneuver them, the Japanese, into the position of firing the first shot. So he's saying we had to maneuver Japan into attacking us without allowing too much danger to ourselves. It was a difficult proposition. Right? So he's saying the same stuff here. Yeah, you got to get the Japanese to attack us, and we got to let them attack us, but at the same time, we try to minimize the damage here. All right. So now then here's confessions. I guess you can say the McCulloch plan was a confession because it clearly shows that we're trying to get Japan to attack us. Here's 8 things we're going to do to try to get Japan to attack us. Right? They're trying to induce an attack by Japan. All right. So that's the thing that's done in war, right? You try to get your guy to attack you, then you point the finger at them, or you get them to attack. Look at Vietnam, right? I'm telling you, tricky stuff is done. People laugh at me. Oh, you're crazy. You think the U.S. Like, man, I'm not crazy. You're just stupid or just ignorant, right? You don't know anything. This is like done over and over and over again. This is not like just 4 examples. There's more. There's more. I can go through many more. I'm going to cover 4 more tomorrow. So now, given what I taught you there, here's the conclusion again. Let's see if you can integrate, if you can retain all this stuff, which I don't know, it's not easy to do, right? Then you can say, well, yeah, right? This is true. So the conclusion is, which people would think crazy when I first started, the conclusion is FDR administration not only knew the attack was coming, they in fact maneuvered Japan into attacking, and then once they knew the attack is coming, they opened the door for a successful Japanese attack. Right? Why? Because you had to move the American public. And what did I say? I said that the key strategy, there's 2 key strategic elements in controlling resources. Controlling your half of all strategy boils down to controlling your human resources and your material resources. Of the 2, human is more important, right? But I mean, they're both important. And maybe as you get more and more high-tech, sophisticated technology, right, the material resources increase in importance, right? But always human resource trumped material in importance, because wars are not fought by weapons. Wars are fought by people who have to fight, suffer, and die. Right? You have to have the will to fight. And that's it for the first 4. I'll cover the next 4 tomorrow. All right? And this is part of the summary. So we fight a lot of wars. We're always fighting wars. We're always starting wars. All right? Constantly a war, except for 16 years out of 244. All right? And then we trick the public into these wars. All right? I mean, this is not new. This is not like isolated incident. This is done all the time. No one should be surprised that the U.S. starts wars and does tricky things to manipulate the population into wars. Right? No one should be, but they all are. They all think it's crazy because they know. I'm sorry to say it, but they know nothing. All right. Hopefully that will help educate people